Picture this. A dimly lit room filled with whisper-quiet conversations, glowing laptop screens, and walls lined with books that look more like weapons than knowledge. Behind those doors, far away from elections, parliaments, and public debates, ideas are being crafted, ideas powerful enough to move markets, shift alliances, and change the economic direction of entire nations. A single report, a single forecast, a single policy paper written by a group of experts you've probably never met can raise or crash a currency, influence a president's decision, or dictate how billions of dollars flow across borders. Most people think global power lives in government buildings, inside presidential offices. Think tanks are often described as idea factories, but that phrase barely scratches the surface of what they do or how far their influence spreads. They are research institutions filled with economists, analysts, political scientists, and former government officials who spend their days creating models, forecasting crises, and building frameworks for how the global economy should work. Their reports don't just sit on websites. They travel. They land on lawmakers' desks, show up in central bank briefings, appear in news headlines, and influence the talking points of presidents and prime ministers. The public rarely knows their names, but governments, corporations, and international institutions rely on their expertise to navigate an increasingly complex world. Yet this influence doesn't come without questions. Who funds these institutions? How neutral are their ideas, and what happens when the people shaping global policy aren't elected, but selected? In today's video, we aren't here to glorify think tanks or accuse them. We are here to understand them, to break down how they operate, how their ideas travel from quiet offices into global policy, and why their influence matters to every single one of us. Because the truth is simple. Even if you've never stepped inside a think tank, your life has already been shaped by one. From the price of your groceries to the interest rate on your loans to the trade agreements that affect your job, these institutions have left their fingerprints everywhere. And by the end of this video, you LLC the global economy through an entirely different lens, one that reveals the hidden architects behind the decisions that shape our world. The hidden architects behind every major economic shift. There is often a room full of thinkers shaping ideas before they become policy. Think tanks operate quietly, yet their influence is immense. They gather data, run models, and propose strategies that later appear in government speeches or central bank decisions. These institutions act as unseen architects, designing the frameworks that guide nations through crises, trade negotiations, and global competition. Their power doesn't come from elections or public approval, but from expertise, access, and credibility. Understanding them means understanding the invisible forces that guide the world's money, markets, and political alliances. Birth of the idea factories. Think tanks began in the early 20th century when governments needed expert advice to navigate rapid industrial growth and global conflict. Organizations like the Brookings Institution and the Rand Corporation emerged as centers of research, prediction, and strategic planning. Over time, they grew into vital partners for policymakers worldwide. After World War II, their role expanded dramatically as nations rebuilt their economies and formed global institutions like the IMF and World Bank. Today, think tanks are essential bridges between academic research and real-world decisions, shaping debates that affect billions of people across the global economy. How think tanks operate. Inside a think tank, teams of economists, political analysts, historians, and former officials work together to produce insights that guide leaders. Their process is structured but powerful. Gather data, analyze trends, build models, publish reports, and spread ideas through media and policymakers. These reports become the foundation for discussions in parliaments, ministries, and international summits. In many cases, a single paper can change national priorities or inspire reforms. Their credibility relies on expertise, reputation, and the strength of their research. While they don't create laws, their ideas often become the basis for laws others eventually write. The titans of global influence. Some think tanks have become global institutions in their own right. Brookings shapes American policy debates. Chatham House influences Europe's geopolitical strategies, and the Peterson Institute guides discussions on international trade. Rand Corporation works closely with defense and economic planning, while the Carnegie Endowment focuses on diplomacy and global stability. These organizations have access to presidents, CEOs, finance ministers, and international agencies. Their reports can move markets, shift alliances, and set the tone for global negotiations. Understanding who these institutions are and what they believe is essential to understanding modern power itself. Following the money. To understand think tanks, you must understand their funding. Money comes from governments, corporations, wealthy individuals, and global institutions. Each donor has its own interests, and those interests can influence what topics are studied or how certain issues are framed. While many think tanks promote transparency, critics argue that hidden donors shape research agendas behind the scenes. For example, corporate funding might steer research toward free trade or deregulation, while government funding may emphasize national security priorities. Funding doesn't automatically corrupt research, but it raises an important question. Whose vision of the global economy is being promoted? From research to policy, ideas created inside think tanks travel quickly. A report might be cited in a congressional hearing, briefed to central bankers, or shared with the president before a major summit. Media outlets quote think tank experts to explain complex issues, amplifying their influence. Many analysts rotate between think tanks and government positions, creating a revolving door of expertise that shapes both policy and public opinion. Through this pipeline, ideas move from research papers to real-world decisions. A concept that starts in a quiet office can end up affecting taxes, interest rates, trade agreements, and international strategies. Critics and controversies. Despite their importance, think tanks face serious criticism. Some argue they act as elite echo chambers, promoting ideologies rather than balanced research. Others point to corporate or foreign funding that may bias recommendations. There are concerns about lack of accountability, since think tanks influence policy without being elected or directly answerable to the public. Critics also note that think tanks often favor market-driven policies that benefit powerful donors. These controversies highlight the tension between expertise and democracy, raising the question of who should shape global economic decisions, and why certain voices dominate the conversation. Why think tanks still matter. Despite the criticisms, think tanks remain crucial in a world filled with uncertainty. They provide deep analysis that governments often lack the time or resources to produce. They predict crises, warn about risks, and offer solutions rooted in research rather than politics. In an era of misinformation, their expertise can guide leaders through complexity. Think tanks also serve as meeting grounds where experts from different countries collaborate to address global challenges. Love them or question them, these institutions help shape the economic world we live in. Understanding them means understanding the forces working behind global power. Every day, policies are announced, markets react, and nations adjust their strategies, yet behind many of these decisions lies a world most people never see. Think tanks don't command armies, they don't win elections, and they don't make laws, but their influence flows quietly, shaping the choices of those who do. As we've seen, these institutions stand at the intersection of knowledge and power, offering ideas that can stabilize economies or accelerate global shifts. The question isn't whether think tanks matter, they do. The real question is, who shapes the thinkers? Who funds the ideas? And who decides which visions guide billions of lives? In a world that moves faster every year, ideas have become the most powerful currency. They influence interest rates, trade agreements, national strategies, and even the price of basic necessities. And while think tanks operate in the shadows, their ideas ripple across continents. So the next time a leader announces a new policy or the global economy pivots in a new direction, remember this. The spark for that decision may not have come from a government office. It may have been lit in a quiet room inside a think tank. The global economy is shaped not just by the people we elect, but by the minds we rarely see. And understanding those minds is the first step to understanding the world we re-living in and the world we re-heading toward.